Can go ahead and start. Do you have the Pledge of Allegiance, and is it with music this time with the kids?
I'm going to make it happen with music this time.
Okay. So
I
would like to call this meeting to order on June 24th at 7:32. If we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Well, and we are waiting for the video to load. so it's got the little circle here spinning.
We have to have the kids do this. Like special. Come on.
I know. I'm getting a. Hold on. I'll click on it again. Okay. Close the program. I'm going to try again. Yeah, I think we're going to have to go manual because the computer is not letting it, it's not loading. The Google Drive thing is not loading, so sorry.
So let's do this.
All right.
Okay, I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll get that up and running at some point, which will be great.
Yeah, tonight I think it's just an internet glitch. It's just not loading up.
Okay, we will move to the approval of agenda. I don't believe we have anything to add. Therefore, we will jump to approval of minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the June 10th, 2020 minutes.
Mari, I'll move to approve those minutes.
Tony Holt, second.
Okay, any discussion? I lost my little block here. The thing. So does anyone have any corrections, or are we good? Looks like we're good. So all those in favor say aye or nay if you oppose, or you can abstain. Jacob?
Aye.
Ford?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Griffin?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Dana?
Aye.
And I also agree with it. The minutes of June 10th, 2020 are now approved as is, and that passes unanimously. We will move to public participation. At this point, we will like to have anyone in the public have 2 minutes. We have Tony the timer who will give you 30-second notification once it gets to that point. And the board members can answer any questions during the points of information.
Sorry, Ashley, can I just quickly interject? I've got a couple of folks that are saying they're having a hard time getting in. So I know internet seems to be a little wobbly. So I know Dr. Willett's on top of the waiting room, but just to be a little extra vigilant with that, I'd appreciate it. I'm sure that the folks who want to get in on it would be appreciative too.
Yeah, so far I have, I'm letting everybody in the waiting room that is appearing. Anybody that appears is getting let in. But
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Okay, so at this time, the public, if you could raise your little blue hand, that would be great. We can call on you to have 2 minutes. Okay. Once again, I don't know if we have any callers, but that would be *9 if you're calling in. Someone sounds like they're in a wind tunnel.
Yes.
Okay, if there is no public participation at this time, we can move on to the correspondence, and we will have Tony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We received an email offering support for the one-to-one technology initiative. Ryder described her experience borrowing the unit from the district. Ryder felt that the Chromebook was a crucial component to her students' successful completion of the educational requirements. goes on to note that the deliveryman that brought the Chromebook to her house was very nice, she said. Another email complimenting Dr. Willett and our community of educators for their perseverance during this pandemic. In addition, the writer deeply appreciated Dr. Willett's daily communication. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Tony. For some reason, I'm having my blocks and everything's not as normal. Okay, points of information at this time. Would any board member have anything to say they would like? Okay, Kate.
I do. Okay, cool. Thank you. Kate Howard Bender. So I actually have a proposal, and I just want to read it. And then what I'll do afterwards is send it to you, Ashley, through email, and you can send it on to Lisa. So the proposal action for the purposes of the Tolland Board of Education calendar for the 2020-2021 school year, and thereafter that the holiday celebrated mid-October be renamed Indigenous Peoples Day in lieu of Columbus Day. And the rationale is, though Columbus Day was first created as a way to honor Italian Americans throughout the United States, Christopher Columbus has had a storied past of brutality and genocide. This change to the Tolland Public Schools calendar is not an attempt to devalue the contributions of Italian Americans to the development of the United States. The proposal is an attempt on behalf of the Tolland Public Schools to be more inclusive by recognizing the multiple indigenous tribes who inhabited the region before it was colonized by Europeans. The proposal attempts to look back into history to give credence and validation to those indigenous people who have been historically subsumed, maltreated, or otherwise. The cost is obviously nothing, and just today's the submission date, and I collected a bunch of resources for everybody's perusal. So I would like to put that into our action potentially, or whatever the case may be, but I wanted to get that onto the books.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's necessarily a board action, because if it's a state policy and that's what we
It's
go
not a state policy. There are multiple districts in Connecticut. Sorry, there are
Yeah,
multiple. Okay, sorry.
It's a federal holiday. B, it would be with the state policy. And I know they tried to change that for the statewide in 2017, and it didn't pass. So I feel as though until the state makes that requirement, I don't feel like that should be upon a board decision, since it is stemming from a federal level. That's my take on it. I don't know if anybody else would have something else to say. I'm sure Tony probably does, our policy guy. But that's kind of how I feel, and I don't think that that's necessarily a board action. Tony, I hate to put you on the spot, but
Nope. And actually, in thinking about it, we can't change the name of the federal holiday. It's a federal holiday, and that would require congressional approval. But I think I agree with you, Ashley, that the celebration of it being a state issue is just outside the purview of necessarily this board.
So I'm going to have to respectfully disagree, because it's not. I'm not proposing to change the state holiday name. I'm proposing to change what we call it on our Tolland Public Schools calendar. It's, I don't want to do more than I have right to do. So I think that, in light of recent events and in light of, being looking to become more inclusive and aware, I think that it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we have the most accurate historical perspective that we can have as the Board of Education. So, I'm going to have to respectfully disagree, because it's been done in Connecticut. Other districts have chosen to do it, and if the political will isn't there, then that's certainly within the confines of the Board of Education. But I would think that we would want to get somebody who is such a problematic person off of our calendar. So that's just where I'm just putting it out there.
no, and if you could just pass your proposal, people can review it. That would be great.
And if we could we see? I think Kate, you said you had some resources and
Absolutely.
things. Yep. If we could see those, I think that'd be helpful.
Absolutely. It's on the proposal. I just emailed it to Ashley. So for your discretion,
Okay.
Ashley, if you would like to share that with everyone, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, no, I think that would be great. I can forward it to everyone. And if you could please not reply all, that would be my only request. Karen, you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate that there are other districts that have changed their calendar to reflect the name change and not the federal holiday. So I think we just need to kind of do our homework on that.
Okay, fair enough. Griffin, do you have your hand up to say something, or is it just up from before?
Nope, sorry, just from before.
Okay. Anybody else have anything before we move to the students' representative report? Anyone else? Okay. So at this time, I would like to have Fisher Thompson and Alexandria Costa. And is Alexandria on here? There we go. Both of them have their hands up. The graduate. Let's go to Fisher.
All right, congratulations, Fisher.
Thank you. I'm actually going to first of all just pass this off to Alexandra because she wants to cover a few things really quick.
So now that the school year is over, there's obviously not much going on at the schools, but I think the end of school year worked really well for everyone. We had all of our locker cleanouts and everything. There's clubs are no longer meeting, so there's not anything to report there, but student council officers are now the new officers have taken over positions. We're going to have Simmer here on today's meeting as the new board rep. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so we had graduation, our virtual graduation, and I have to say, Dr. Willett, everything got put together absolutely fantastically, and you get that executive producer tag there, so kudos to you.
I'm not sure I deserve that.
Either way, I was honestly surprised by not that I was expecting it to be bad. I was just surprised by how great it ended up being. And on the 20, let me think, what would that have been? The 20, it was it the 20th, last Saturday. The last ride, again, absolutely great. Everyone, as far as I know, and I know Emily Bliss, I believe in the meeting room here. She put together a little compilation video of everyone. She just showed me today, and everyone had a smile on their face. The students the graduates in the cars, and everyone along the sidewalks, along the roads. It was a fun time for all. That being said, I won't eat up too much time talking about the in-person graduation because obviously the committee and liaison reports, but I want to take some time. Tonight, I have the special privilege of introducing both the town and the Board of Education to Simmer Grewal, your next student representative to the Tolland Board of Education. But before I do so, I'd like to deliver a few parting words, as this is my last meeting as a student representative. If I've learned anything over the course of my 2 terms on the Board of Education, it's that Dr. Willett is practically indispensable to the board and to the town of Tolland, and one of the kindest, most caring people I've ever met. This goes to both Simmer and the board. If you need anything, be it clarification, advice, anything, Dr. Willett is your guy. Now, while I am still at liberty to say, and I would suggest a few limits to this. Dr. Willett, as any human, needs sleep. And to be frank, I'd wish he'd be able to get more. Do not overwork him. We as a district are understaffed, and being the kind and caring person Dr. Willett is, he will take it upon himself. He is a fantastic resource, don't get me wrong, but he is also a fantastic human who, again, I wish would get a little more sleep. One thing that Dr. Willett makes The one thing that makes Dr. Willett such an amazing superintendent is that he cares deeply about our students and staff here in the Tolland Public Schools. He goes above and beyond anything and everything to make sure we as a board follow, and I quote, our moral, ethical, and legal obligations. This being said, if you as a board are not making decisions based on their educational values to students, you are not doing the job of a board of education. Teaching and learning are not about party lines or budget figures. They are about the twinkle in a child's eye when they are first experiencing science in the open, or a high schooler going off to college. We have amazing school staff in this town, and we need to support them to support our students. The vision of the Tolland Board of Education, it's on every agenda, is to represent education at its best, preparing each student for an ever-changing society and becoming a full community of learning where excellence is achieved through each individual's success. Either you live up to that or you don't. Either you prepare each student for success or you don't. In my eyes and in the eyes of our ever-changing society, there is no middle ground. Either we act as a full community or we don't. We can cross as many T's and dot as many I's as we'd like, but if we don't have this vision in our minds every step of the way, we've already lost. And I'd like to thank both current and past board members, as well as Dr. Willett, for opening my eyes to this and really just showing me this in my 2 terms here on the board. Intervention is necessary. Mental health resources are necessary. The arts are necessary. Technology is necessary. I could pontificate for as long as I'd like, but it wouldn't change this basic truth. If you are not preparing each and every student for success, you are not doing the job of a board of education. It is in my experience that getting students involved we've seen within the past few months this happen firsthand, but getting students involved will help with understanding what's best for students and bridging whatever divide there may be. And students tend to know more than anyone is willing to give them credit for. Though I will no longer be a student representative, this won't be the last time you'll hear this and more from me and many others, even once we can get back into town hall. Simmer is one of the most civically involved students in the Tolland Public School system. She already actively fights for justice with the American Civil Liberties Union and has embraced a life of fighting for what's morally, ethically, and legally correct. She is one of the most involved people in Tolland High School Student Council and is always the first to suggest a project to do completely out of the goodness of her own heart. She is incredibly intelligent, well-spoken, and is truly a force to be reckoned with. Dr. Willett has talked about leaving a legacy as a student representative, and I have to tell you, I am proud, very, very proud to have Simmer join my colleague and friend, Alexandra Costa, as a student representative. They will be a wonderful team, and I couldn't think of 2 others I would want more to act as a legislative voice for our students. So everyone, please join me in welcoming Simmer Grewal and Alexandra Costa as next year's student representatives. Congrats, everyone.
If we could
Welcome.
and Simmer's on here, if we could just kind of
Welcome,
get
Simmer.
her on, that would be great too. Fisher, I wish you all the best. I think at Berkeley is going to be great with you, and you're going to have a lot of success in the future. So no worries there.
Thank you.
Good.
And with that, I conclude my student representatives report.
Thank you, Fisher. If we could give
Thank
Fisher
you,
a good round
Fisher.
of
Nice
applause
job.
too,
Thank you.
for outgoing and then
Very kind.
incoming. Simmer, hi, welcome. I'm glad that you're
Hi.
here to join us.
I'm very excited to work with you all, and I hope we make real changes here.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us.
Simmer, is that Leonardo DiCaprio has joined you tonight?
Yeah, I have a poster in my room.
Okay. And just, now we know a little bit about you.
Life size.
So once again, if we could just give everybody a great round of applause. I know it's hard because we're virtual, but just welcome everyone. Outgoing Fisher, you guys did a great job, and we look forward to what's going to happen next. This is great. So thank you so much, Simmer. And thank you again, Fisher and Alexandria.
Ashley, I just had a quick comment for Fisher because I know this is his last meeting. Fisher, I know I have enjoyed having you on the board all these years, and we all at the virtual ceremony here at our house with my family all enjoyed your speech. It was wonderful and insightful and very thoughtful, and I'm sure you are going to go on to do great things. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
And
much.
welcome, Simmer.
Yep. And I would mirror that too, Fisher. You've been a great representative, and you've gone beyond the role that anyone would have expected. So we deeply thank you for that and all your contributions.
Thank you. And Dr. Willett, I hope you get at least one more hour tonight.
I'll be good. Thank you. I have the coffee. I'm good.
Thank you, Fisher. It's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time,
Ashley, I'd love to say something really quick.
Go ahead.
Fisher, your words, beyond emotions, brilliantly spoken. I reiterate what Karen had said. I'm watching the ceremony. I mean, you amaze me, young man. You really do.
Thank you.
Alexandra and Simmer, I look forward to getting to know both of you more. Fisher, I wish I had more time, but I'm sure that tonight's not the last. I know tonight's not the last we're going to see of you. But you three young adults, as Dr. Willett said, I'm really excited to see the roads that you're going to travel and the paths that you're going to create and the legacies that you're going to make. And brilliantly spoken, Fisher. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I just throw one more kudo out real quick to the people that did that virtual grad? So I just want to say there was a tremendous amount of work related to that virtual graduation. I just want to props out to Todd Blaze, Amy Steed, Kathleen Marshall, Todd Zenzek, also with the parade and all of those things. That was everything to do with them and the public safety, all of that, and food service, the ice cream, the barbecue, all of it was just amazing. And those individuals really made it all happen. So just so thankful for their hard work. And we're leaving people, and I know I'm leaving people out, but they were the main ones who really put it together, and for all the people that helped, all the staff that helped, thank you so much for that. And to the parents who helped. I mean, it was just very, very thankful for all the help that was provided. Mr. Lambert was out there playing music for everyone, and it just was a beautiful thing to see the community come together and people work so hard. So thank you.
No, that's perfect. My family enjoyed that, having the senior for my nephew, and it's a lot to go on with emotions going on, COVID, this, that, the other thing, virtual, and, of course, a couple of tears with the virtual, and it was cute at the end, especially with the hat throwing, because, when we went, it's like, he's like, okay, put your tassel and then throw your hat, but he was telling everybody, and you could tell, like, the different parts that people were getting right off the bat, and then they're like, oh, forget this, just throw the hat, so it definitely was enjoyable.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else at this time have anything to say? Because then we will move on to the superintendent's report. I think we're good. So, Dr. Willett, if you want to bring up the goal setting to have Nick, I believe Nick was on here. I saw him at some point. Oh, there he is. I see him now. He's waving. He's muted, but he's there.
So just Mr. Caruso is going to join us. He's joined us tonight as part of the first step in our goal setting process for the Board of Ed. Sorry about that. Just woke everybody up. So tonight, I'm just going to give you a brief history, highlight brief history of the process of goal setting, the goals that have been set by the board, and generally give you an overview of how goals come together for our school system. And so this is the lead-in, the first of 3 in a series to have us get to the point of the completion of the Board of Education goals for the coming year. So I'll basically give you a quick categorization of what we're going to be looking at here. We're going to look at the history of the Board of Ed goals. Then I'm going to give you a brief history of our VMG process, which is vision, mission, and goal process as part of our district process. So the BOE goals have had a history of some boards have completed them and some boards have functioned a little bit more autonomously. So I'll be showing you just the examples. I won't go through every single thing. So in order to keep it to an hour and keep everybody, or under an hour, which was my pledge, I'm not going to show every single document. I'll just give you a sampling of documents, okay? So it's going to feel like every single document, but it's not going to be every single document. It'll be a sampling, and at the end, we'll do Q&A, and and the objective is to give you a sense of how these things evolved over time and how they are developed within district. So to start, you should be looking at the Google Drive. Is everybody seeing this Google Drive with the goals and all that? All right, so there's a folder that I created called History of Goals. And in the Board of Ed Goals folder, goals from 2006, for instance, an example of the kinds of goals that were being set by the Board of Education about 14 years ago, had a lot to do with broad-based goals that were stated in paragraph form, and in general terms, focused basically on a budget, budget goals, curriculum goals, maximizing achievement, and increasing awareness and recognition of contributions. So it was more broadly stated, and there were fewer goals. As we go later in time on the Board of Ed goals, moving into 09 to 2012, these goals get a little bit more detailed. The boards of education start providing goals in areas of categories like achievement and quality. So the Board of Education goals for this term of 3 years were essentially achievement goals, as you see here, demonstrating achievement, demonstrating fine arts and performing achievement, demonstrating control of and ability to function in a multicultural society, and then the area of quality goals that they kind of bifurcated it, I guess, here, talking a little bit about curriculum in the 21st century, which is something we're also still doing today, and ensuring the system as a whole engages in continuous improvement, self-evaluation, and developing a comprehensive plan. So in 9 through 12, these were the goals, and they were getting a little bit more detailed. As you get into the goals of the current board, 18-19, and these goals remain. These are the goals of the Board of Education that were set at the end of the 2018 year for the 2019-2020 year. So these were established at that point, and they went through the 1920 year that we're in today. So the Board of Ed goals that most currently were developed are these 8 goals. Now, the goal-setting process through the history of the board has generally been in collaboration with the superintendent as far back as I could tell, and it's designed to connect to the other overall goal process for the district. The district's goal-setting process is grounded in a lot of educational literature and the hard work of your educational staff. It's also used to make sure that the goal setting of the principals is tied to the goal setting of the district, and also the goal setting of the teachers is tied to the goal setting of the school and the principals. So the process of goal setting goes from a district level to a school level to a staff level. And the staff execute goals that are based on the school goals, and the school's goals are based on the district goals. So I'll be talking about all of those things today in a fairly short form. But the Board of Ed goals are usually in a parallel to the district goals. So what the district has for its academic, cultural, and and RTIS or BI goals, for instance, the Board of Ed has usually gotten a review of those, and then in its goal setting process creates goals in parallel to those that are generally supportive in policy and in practice of the overall educational objectives of the district. So in this particular case here, you see that goal 1, for instance, supporting and encouraging specialized programs that serve as alternative to outplacement. That parallels goals that were part of the district's objectives, and that's been very successful, as you know. Outplacements have been reduced significantly, so there's been a lot of success in those goals. Support and encourage the development of tuition programs, similar. We've had success with that. So as you go through this, you can see how these are connected to conversations that, even as a fairly new board, you have heard happening over the span of the last few months as we've been talking about things, even as we talked about building the budget. So the budgets, were closely tied to these goals. Obviously, tuition, outplacement, all these kinds of things are tied in objective form to what we were trying to practice when we were building our budgets and supporting programs. So that's really what the board goals are designed to be, is in parallel with district goals and used as basically the framework for how decisions are made with budget and in other ways. So as you go through this goal setting process, you're really setting the stage and the scaffolding for how you will operate and how you will enforce policy and write policy and how you will approach budget. And that's the way it's designed to be. So just going through again, strategic prevention framework, reaching out, that ended up taking a little bit of a back seat this year with COVID, but the board was and has taken actions on that. The SERBA surveys, the ARRAY surveys, and various other actions that the board has engaged in and the district has engaged in tie right in with that. Superintendent exploring research and shared opportunities. Many of you know that as board members, we went to EastCon and worked with this committee that was talking about shared services, and the town and the board are exploring shared services with some back office, as they call it, operations. So that's also how that's being executed this year. And looking at town, state, and federal officials to advocate for education. We did the legislative breakfast. So you can see how all these things that the board set out as goals, we've tied into our actions. And so as superintendent, I take the board goals, I take the district goals, which have to be a little bit more granular because we're basing our personnel's goals off of them, but they're basically our marching orders for how we execute things in the district. And as a superintendent, I look to the board goals and I look to the district goals about what I need to get done. So all of these things you've seen having a connection. And 8, again, fostered the continued development of instructional technology with the one-to-one initiative, that kind of thing. So you've now been in your roles as board members. Some of you have been here for a long time. Some of you joined recently this year. You can see even in these last few months as we went through budget how the board's goals have connected to those actions. And so that's essentially what you're doing. The board goals over time went from these more largely based paragraphs that are generally stated to more detailed categorized goals to what they are today, which is directly connected to your actions as board members. So that's the process that Mr. Caruso will likely be bringing you through, and you will likely be building it off of the operational and policy and budget objectives that you have overall. And so now, in order to get to that point, I'm going to tell you about some of the history of the district's goals. So the purpose of telling you about the history of the district goals is to give you an idea of how these goals are built traditionally in the past, how they're built today, and then how they may connect to the work that you're going to be doing in the next 2 sessions. So please bear with me. There is some content here, and I know that I am going to be taking some of the oxygen out of the virtual room as I do this, but I promise that I will be wrapping it up with some expediency so that I will not be maybe beating to death with it. So looking at this, I'm going to go through 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19, up to today. And I am not going to show you every single document. So we're just going to go kind of quickly through these and then open up options for Q&A. Mr. Caruso may have some things he wants to share or say, and then we can wrap up that agenda item. So Going into 15-16, just to give you an idea, in 15-16, when I first came in, we used, actually, I'll go back to that in a minute. This is the summary of the visioning activities that we did. So this was submitted to the Board of Education based on the retreat back in 2015. And if you, and I'll share this later to the Board of Ed dashboard and anywhere else we want to post it, this was an overview of what was discussed that ultimately culminated in the pillars of, we called them pillars at the time, the pillars of our programmatic approach. So there are pillars for our behavioral kind of programs, things like that. But at the end of the day, it ended with, or the end of the process ended with these 5 overall vision statements. Now, visions are generally supposed to be a sentence. These go a bit beyond that. But these were the guiding statements that were used for the district back in 2015. For instance, for curriculum, create and implement student-focused, rigorous curriculum that is standards-based, vertically and horizontally aligned, and is consistently implemented K-12. So once these overall parent vision statements were created, the district then went through a process where we took a look at every single one of these vision statements and then created goals off of those vision statements that had what's called indicators of success, actions to achieve the goal, the date that we would be looking for progress on that goal, the people responsible, and ultimately the resources necessary to execute them. So, this is every time I try to blow it up, it actually seems to shrink it. And I'm not sure why that is. So tonight's technology has not been, working with me. But I'm not sure how much you can see this, but ultimately for every one of those vision statements, there are goals. What an indicator of success says, how will we know this has been achieved? And then materials and people that are assigned to that task. So every single one of those vision statements, every single one of those broader statements is then followed up by a series of goals and indicators that would suggest how these were achieved. So in 2015, that was the work that I started with the admin in the district, was breaking it down into this level. And then at the end of the year, administrators are evaluated by how part of their evaluation, roughly 45% of their evaluation relates back to whether they achieved the goals of the district that they were assigned. So that's how it ties into admin evaluation. Similarly, teachers were to base their goals off of the main goals of the entire district. So the school goals would be based off of these goals. Administrator goals would be assigned, broken down more granularly into what we would be achieving. And then teacher goals were built off of what the school's goals were. So I'll be getting you into the school goals in a minute, but essentially talking from district to administrator, that's how those were established. They were brainstormed, there were sessions to come up with them, and then there were goals set with indicators of success and dates that they needed to be achieved by and people that were assigned. So that was 2015-16. I'm just checking text for a minute to make sure nobody's blocked out of the room really quick. I think somebody got kicked out, so give me 1 second to make sure. Yes, let me get somebody in here. Sorry, somebody got kicked out. Please. Just checking the waiting room. Okay, so I think we're all good. Everybody's in. So back to the presentation here. So now you move to 16-17. So again, in 16-17, there was a movement called coherence. And as part of the coherence, we added another layer to the goal setting process. You can see that the setting of granular goals was still part of the picture at that time. You can see that there is a vision master, and the green area here was whether these goals were achieved or not. So we tracked whether the goals were achieved and at what level, what the obstacles to achieving those goals were, things like that. So this represents an end-of-year document that I used to track whether we had achieved the objectives and achieved the data objectives and the SMART goals that we had set forward. And so the process stayed the same, but a layer was added called coherence. And this coherence movement was, how well do we do things together? Are we working together as teams? what is our effectiveness as a team? So now not only do we hit the goals, but are we working as teams effectively together? Are we working coherently as one team towards one end? So this added another layer to it. We identified priority areas, modified the goals. The areas in red are certain adjustments. Mastery learning was added. And ultimately, we created these subcategories that we were going to focus on: curriculum and instruction, comprehensive assessment, and culture. And Karen might remember this as the 3 C's. So not only did we have our overall goals, we had the 3 C's. And the 3 C's were curriculum and instruction, comprehensive assessment, and culture. And off of these 3 C's, the SIP goals were created. So SIPs are school improvement program goals. So essentially now all schools in this Tolland Public Schools had 3 categories of goals. They had academic goals, culture and climate goals, and response to intervention goals. All principals had to set their goals in these 3 categories, and all teachers would have to set their goals based on what the principal's SIP goals were or the school improvement goals were. So all of the goals worked up to the district goals and tried to keep everybody in a state of coherence, everybody working towards the same ends, and all teachers working on goals that were playing into the goals of the school, and all schools working into goals that were playing into the directives of the district. So ultimately, this document just broke down in great detail how this was done. And so this was at a time called the coherence sort of movement, making everything coherent. So we added that layer, but you'll notice that most of the practices stayed the same, of setting your goal, which is a SMART goal, setting your objective, setting your indicator of success, did you achieve it or not, who was assigned to it, and so on. So at that level, those items still stayed mostly the same. Moving into 17-18, again, it's just keeping with the coherence document, and ultimately at the end of the day, the SIPs were still maintained. Now I'm going to show you an example of an SIP in a minute, so you can see what it looks like at the granular level. So moving, again, more broadly to what it looks like, and let me just show you some examples. When the district sets its overarching vision and mission and goals, and then the schools set their SIPs based on them, and they're set in those 3 categories, either academic, culture, or response to intervention, the SIPs look like this. So every school has to, every principal is responsible, every administrator is responsible for writing these school improvement plans. And these school improvement plans have a series of goals based on the district's vision, mission, and goals. So these are examples of the MOY represents the middle of the year check-in. The goals are set at the beginning of the year. There is a mid-year check-in that I do with every single administrator, and then we have end-of-year results. Now, the conundrum this year was that these are tied into administrator evaluations, and the state of Connecticut essentially said that we no longer had to do evaluations for teachers or administrators. So it released the teachers and administrators of any evaluations. So the end of year information is, I'm trying to pull that together now, but because we didn't have any evaluations, the administrators, teachers did not have to complete the document for the end of the year. So I'm still collecting the data, but the formal process got interrupted by the state. We're putting it back in place, but I'm showing you what the mid-year update looks like, and just know that at the end of the year, the data would be updated through June. Right now, I don't have that because the state of Connecticut said that then people don't have to do summative evaluations this year. So that's part of the tricky thing that we're working through right now. But these are what these look like in a school level form. So the SIPs, School Improvement Plan or Program Goals, essentially break down into academic, culture and climate, and academic is also RTI. The high school does not have as many RTI goals for a few reasons I can discuss later. Oops. But giving you a high school example first of what these look like, you'll notice that it has to every goal that is set has a category. So there's an academic goal. The district goal, every one of these has to adhere to one of the district's goals. So you'll notice that the first column here, number 9, or row number 9, has an academic set. This could be any of 3. This is academic. That it adheres to district goal 2, a focus on growth in mathematics. The related school improvement goal is that THS students will demonstrate effective problem solving and critical thinking skills. The baseline data is that of the 893 exposures in the first quarter to the school-wide analytic problem solving critical thinking rubric, 187 or 20.9% of the exposures have resulted in a score equal to or greater than 2.5 and less than 3. 525 or 58.8 exposures have resulted in a score greater than 3. Then, what is the indicator of success for this? 70% of the Tolland High School students will have reached a level of proficiency or higher in the school-wide analytic rubric by the end of the 1920 year. And the mid-year check-in of the 1,217 exposures, this is where they were as of, say, I think February. So it's that 263 or 21% of these exposures have resulted in a score equal to or greater than 2.5 or 3, and 68.2 have resulted in a score equal to or greater than 3. So that was their progress at that moment in time. And we would ultimately, at the end of the year, we would fill out the end of year outcome information, and that would say whether we hit the goal or not. As of February, that particular indicator of success was partially met. So these goals are checked with administration at the midpoint, or generally February point, and then they're checked again in June to see whether progress was made on these goals. Now, in a typical year, I would report out the SIP progress to the Board of Education during the summer. So I would give you a basic overview document of all of our schools and the goals that they had achieved. This year, I won't have all of the data because the evaluations were not, the state released people from having to finish them. So I will have some of it, not all of it, but I will still share a data update for the board in the middle of the summer. So this is basically, it starts with the district setting process. Those goals are set. Then it comes down to the school level. The school sets these SIP goals, and then the teachers set their goals based on the school's goals and the district's goals. And every admin's goal that they put in has to adhere to a district goal somewhere. So you'll notice that this particular one in column 14, this one adheres to district goal 3. In column 15, this academic goal adheres to district goal 1. And then as you go farther across the column, through the columns going to the right, you'll notice that the data, the baseline data, is stated for each, and then the indicator of success is stated for each, and then how much progress has been made towards each of these goals represented by the data is stated, and then ultimately whether that goal was met or not. So if you look in, column 15, for instance, the baseline data was 21 out of 183 ninth grade students have at least a 1 first quarter grade below 70. 0 of the 21 parents, guardians have signed up for the conferences, and this design was to help get parent guardians to these conferences. And so when they're working on this, there's various actions that were taken by the administrator to make that happen. The indicator of success would be that 96% of the students in ninth grade will be promoted to 10th. At the beginning of the year, and then they share the data about, mid-year progress towards that. So in these goals, you'll notice, and there's a couple of them shared here, they're all designed to be measurable, specific, timely, and connected to the district's objectives. Another example of this would be middle schools, MOYs. You'll notice that the middle school has an SRBI-RTI goal. You know that as intervention. When we talk about intervention, scientifically research-based interventions or response to intervention, the administrator selects that category of goal. They say which district goal it is adhering to, the related school improvement goal, and ultimately what indicator of success would need to be achieved to say that progress had been made. And then, again, you see the mid-year data. And if we were able to have end-of-year data, you would see what the end-of-year data was, and then ultimately we would be saying whether this was achieved or not. And those would tie into how the administrators were evaluated. So each of these has, again, these kinds of indicators of success and ultimately data that will indicate whether or not there was success on each of them. And so these are the principles ones. And as I go through, I'll show you just a couple quick other ones too, and then I'll move on to how this all kind of ties together into the process. So we also, we're through these kinds of goals, we've ended up showing, for instance, success with mastery learning and various other initiatives that the district. You'll notice that a Board of Ed goal was mastery learning, and data that is shared. I'm not sure if I can show you the mastery learning example, but one of the goals was set to measure progress on mastery learning and reassessments. Actually, this one here. So 87% who took the reassessments improved their scores. Data was collected 4 times a year. These are the indicators of success, that if they get to the point of 87, doing their reassessments, getting better grades, and they did achieve that. 92.15%, were able to improve their scores and improve their grades through the process. And so the middle school has a special process that if a student gets lower than a 70, they must restudy and retake. And ultimately, many students get more content, knowledge, and skills out of doing that. And so the data in this case, just, quickly summarizing it, showed that that was happening, and that was a good thing as the mid-year was reporting. So, or as they were reporting out in the mid-year. So essentially, I gave examples for mid-year of each of these, and all administrators had to submit them. And you'll notice that at Birch Grove, for instance, the academic adheres to District Goal 1, and it's about math fluency. And then the indicators of success are related to math fluency targets. And as of the mid-year, grade 1 reduced the minimal fluency by 49.58%, meaning they had fewer people hitting minimal fluency, which is a good thing. And so these are all related, again, to the overall district goals, and they tie together that way. And the principals work on things that are tied to the district's overall goals that you saw before. So kind of walking all the way back, those are examples of when I talk about SIPs, how the SIPs play in. And so in the overall district documents for administrators, the administrators at the beginning of the process each year are shown the Board of Education goals. How are we tying in to what the Board of Education has set as its overall arching goals? Then they're introduced statement by statement to the district's goals, which all tie into the Board of Ed goals. They work kind of symbiotically. And as a training exercise with administrators, examples are given. Here is a district goal. Here's an example goal that would tie into that district goal. If you're talking about response to intervention and student needs, you're going to have to set a goal on data growth on PSATs, the BASs, the DIBBLs, or the NWEAs. You might be setting a goal to improve, tier 1 methods. So this is giving examples of things that a principal could do or the teachers could do that would adhere to the district's overall goal. So this is a planning document provided to administrators, and the administrators also will use with teachers to give them suggestions when they're setting their goals as to what kinds of goals would link up with our overall district goals. So this is, again, presented and used as a training exercise. And ultimately, at the end, it explains, how their overall evaluation connects to it. But I included this document so you could see how, as a staff, we go from the district level of what the district goals are based on the vision to the granular level of how those goals turn into the goals of the staff as they attempt to execute them. And then in the evaluation process, that becomes 40% of the teacher's evaluation, and it also becomes an equal almost percentage of the administrator's evaluation as part of the state plans. So again, these are in conjunction. When the Board of Education sets its goals, it looks back at the district goals. When the district sets goals, it also looks to be in alignment with the Board of Education. So these two groups, these two efforts are aligned with each other, and that's how they've been executed as we moved from 2015 forward. Earlier in the history of the board, the goals were more generalized, as I showed. As we went through that history and moved into 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, they became more SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, attainable, and time sensitive, and so on. So SMART goals are a thing. They are called SMART goals. The Dufours did work with this, and if people want literature on it, I can provide it. The R is research-based, I believe. So each of the letters is an acronym, and it's a process that we follow to have goals that are basically data-driven. So as you look at that, again, it all ties in the same way that we talked about before. That's a training document. The vision document also gives examples. The administrators work through this. It's another training document that's used that articulates the changes and the proposed changes. We do this every summer in our retreat. This year we're focused on reopening, but we'll be doing this visioning probably later again. And once we see what the board's goals are, we will also be making sure the visioning aligns. So that's also being pushed back a little bit for that reason. And again, these are the generally stated overreaching vision mission statements that tie into how we train, that tie into how we ultimately execute our goals and how we measure them and how we create individual goals that the staff are assessed on. So these things all tie together. So as we arrive to this year, what now has changed is the conversation has shifted to what's called the portrait of a graduate. So it's not that it's vastly different, it's more that it's evolved. So the portrait of a graduate now had sort of an evolution of what we considered to be a vision and missioning process. So I described this new methodology, and again, it's not massively new, it's just an evolution of the process. I provided this document to the board back in November, and it described overall the process that we were going through to transition to our Portrait of a Graduate work. And in short, Portrait of a Graduate is a well-known program. The Connecticut Center for School Change is involved with helping people through the process. The NEASC process, they like to see things like Portrait of a Graduate. As I've talked about, Portrait of a Graduate is going to play into our NEASC evaluation. Our NEASC evaluation is coming within the next 5 years. And so as we go through the next couple of years, we get ourselves in alignment for that. And essentially what I did with this document was try to explain how Understanding by Design connects to Portrait of a Graduate and how the NEASC visit is connected and how ultimately we're working and have worked with Ed Advance and the Center for School Change to help move this Portrait of a Graduate process forward. And then I provided a link so that you can see the work that we started to do this year. So that document was provided to the Board of Education earlier in the process this year to explain what in the 1920 year I was trying to do, which is move us towards the Portrait of a Graduate work so that we ultimately would have a picture of the Tolland graduate that aligned with what the world was expecting from people in the workforce and in the community today. So this gives you a quick example of the kind of work that was done. This goes back now to about November, or prior to November, I'm sorry, it goes back to more like September and October and November. And so prior board was involved. I think Karen, you were on one of the initial ones. And so it was a mixture of community members, students, I think Fisher was in on this too, some other groups. And so community, students, staff, administration, all worked in a process, and this just gives you a kind of truncated element of the skills and dispositions that would be needed by the portrait by the graduate. And at the end of that process, ultimately came the Tolland Public Schools mission, beliefs, and portrait of a graduate. So in partnership with the community, our mission is to inspire and empower all learners to responsibly contribute to this dynamic and global society. And ultimately, we identified both the skills and the dispositions that would be necessary for our graduates. Now, this is a starting point for the work that happens in the community. So as part of what was done for Portrait of a Graduate, and let me move us back a little bit. The staff and other trainings were done to try to get people to identify from those broad categories and skills and definitions what the skills that would be the subordinate or important skills to have that would lead to the student having the ultimate skill set that the Portrait of a Graduate identifies. So we provided additional training for teachers and drew the teachers into the process even more as subsequent to the initial work that happened in September, October, and November. As we moved through the holidays and into February, we had an entire school staff with every single teacher and other staff involved. So we went from that planning group to a very, very large group of everybody in the district with respect to our staff. We did this training that connected to the Portrait of a Graduate work, and ultimately we got from the teachers what they felt were the important skills and abilities that would contribute to those categories and lead ultimately to the graduate having the skills that we wanted and put out there that they should have. This quick video was shown that tried to explain what the 21st century workplace would look like, and this helped prime the teachers for the work that we were doing that day and beyond. I don't know, it's about I think it's a 1-minute video. I don't know if you want to see that video, but essentially it describes how things have changed in the world and why we have to do things differently now. Do you want me to show that really quick?
I would like to see it.
Okay. So, hold on.
Dr. Willett,
We can't hear it.
you hear it.
Okay, hold on.
It might be with the share screen.
Yes, let me try
You've
to-
also sometimes got to say share audio as well. I don't know if that's what's holding up the.
Yeah, let me see. Share screen. Stop share. Let me try it again. Share screen. Share screen. Okay, ready? Let's try this one more time here. And PD presentation, and let's try it. Okay. Can you hear it? Thank God. Okay. So. Okay, so the point of the video is not to make everybody feel depressed, but really to kind of give you a sense that the jobs in this country are changing. The workforce is changing. And so you just, look at the tolls on the highways. People will not be paid for doing those kinds of jobs anymore. You're not going to have toll takers. You're not going to have people making burgers, for instance. Like in the future, these jobs are starting to transition and change to other jobs. When they talk about 21st, 22nd century, we can't be now mastery is even more important. We cannot, in the old school system of schooling, it used to be okay that if you had A's, B's, and C's, for instance, if you had kids that were getting C's and whatever, and these kids would maybe go on and work in certain industrial settings, maybe they would go work in other settings. Those jobs may not exist anymore. So mastery of content, using mastery learning, making sure people master standards, these are even more important than ever because the products, the workforce things they're going to be doing, they're going to be making apps. They're going to be doing things that require lots of collaboration and lots of talent that needs to be developed because some of these other jobs will no longer be available. So looking at Portrait of a Graduate and looking at things that, that we can pivot into, that's where we want to start creating goals that focus on an engineering, a track for engineering and a track for these areas that really play into the development of human creativity, the mind in the process, because the machines can do certain things better than humans can do, but the human's creativity and our ability to innovate, that's our power. So 21st century skills have to be based on, focusing on the student's ability, the human ability to innovate, the human ability to create those robots. Those robots that were walking out at the end, they were conceptualized through the creativity of humans. But the machines might build the machines. Those robots would eventually be built by other robots, but the humans would conceive of them. So the point of showing that was really to say our entire workforce is changing. What's available for jobs is changing. Everything is changing, and that our system of looking at what we want for a graduate has to change with that. So that was ultimately, if I can get the shared screen to kind of come back to me. Okay, so going back to this, which sort of bounces everybody around again. So give me a second to pull everybody in. Share participants. Okay, sorry, just making sure I got everybody. So again, looking at this, it was designed just to say, what are we looking for in long-term outcomes for the students in the Tolland Public Schools? What do they need to have when they graduate? And so some of the things that, might be needed to be a toll taker, that's not going to be something that's going to give them long-term viability for work and maybe even satisfaction in their life. Those jobs will not be available anymore. So what kinds of things are we going to train them for? What skills will they need? What dispositions will they need to be successful in this world? And so that played off of and further evolved the Portrait of a Graduate work, and asking all staff to come together and start to define, what do we need to do to make critical and creative thinkers? What do we need to do to be able to make them effective and independent and do collaborative work? What do we need to be able to do to make them innovative, to build on them being innovative problem solvers? How do we in the process make sure that we develop empathy and kindness? How do we in the process make sure we reinforce integrity? How do we foster resilience, persistence? How do we foster a growth mindset in students? The next step that got a little bit interrupted was from February, March, April, May, June. My objective was to open it up now to community and to reach out to engineers in the community, reach out to business executives through the Tolland Chamber of Commerce in the community, reach out to even marginalized populations. Very important to do that in the community, and say to these individuals in the community, how do we foster these things? And let these affinity groups or these groups help define how we foster these things in our graduates. So our goals and objectives of making sure that we're hitting ELA and math goals, those don't go away. Those stay as part of what we're doing, but they all tie together in our Portrait of a Graduate to make sure that what we are aiming at in our most most important and in a broadest sense is these skills and dispositions that are necessary for human beings to succeed in this very, very quickly changing world. So what I wasn't able to do because of COVID was pull those groups physically together in one place. That got interrupted by the pandemic that happened the month later. So this last piece happened in February. The schools had to evacuate and shut down, in March. And so March, April, May, as you know, and June, we're focused on trying to get through COVID. But I plan on doing the work from July all the way through December on Portrait of a Graduate and pulling these groups together in the community to focus on these areas and these skills and to give from their areas of expertise what they feel is necessary for us to develop as a school system in creating a graduate that has what's needed to be successful. So that's essentially how this all pivots now into the Portrait of a Graduate work. And the board goal setting is happening right smack in the middle of this Portrait of a Graduate work, whereas it probably would have been happening as the Portrait of a Graduate was wrapping up. What I can offer the board for goal setting a perspective are those elements that I had shared before of of the skills and dispositions that the district sees as necessary to be successful, but I don't have the disaggregated things that the individual experts will, like the business community, the engineers, and various other groups will be saying are important. Those will be synthesized into certain goals for our administrators and our teachers. And the teachers were part of creating this, and the administrators obviously were part of creating this all the way from September to October to November through February, and that's where we are now. So the Board of Ed goal setting process comes in right about in the middle of our finishing up the Portrait of a Graduate work. So it's good timing too, in that we are getting to a point of completion with that, and the district's goals from the perspective of the board can continue to tie into how we develop and work in those areas. So just so you also get a couple of closing pieces here, this document, let's go, the presentation, and then our 21st century framework materials, I put those up and we'll put them on the dashboard, also contribute to the process. Portrait of a Graduate usually will end, we'll have some graphics that talk about what our main skills and dispositions are. And then at the end of the day, when we finally develop the final thing, administrators will have their, their goal and evaluation process tied to those overarching district goals, objectives, and ultimately Board of Ed parallel goals. So it ties all together in evaluation at the end of the day. What we set as district vision and Portrait of a Graduate ultimately is what they create their SIPs, which I showed you on, and those SIPs are used to evaluate the administrators, and the administrators use those SIPs to transfer goals down to the teachers, and the teachers are evaluated on those goals. So that's how it all ties together. Hopefully that made sense. I think I achieved that within a 30-minute period, maybe 40. So that is where I will leave it for any questions.
I don't know if at this point that Nick would like to jump in and have anything to say.
Sure, yes.
Good evening. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the process a little bit because, you actually answered the question just now that I had written down a while ago, which was where the status of the Portrait of the Graduate work is done, because I would think that being completed would be helpful for the board, but we can't wait. And you've got enough of the defining information on that the board could go forward. The next question I have is really kind of a chicken and egg question, because while the board goals and the district goals are parallel, my assumption is, from what I've heard, that that your staff, Dr. Willett, you and your staff have put that together or are putting that together, and the board would be reacting to that. Is that accurate?
Yeah, unfortunately, the way timelines have sort of smashed together. We had the whole COVID thing, and I think the board ultimately, its goal setting got pushed off by all of this as well. So whereas we would have had certain things sequential here, like I would have rather had that POG bit wrapped up so the board could then look at it and, act in parallel without any disruption. But right now, it just happens to be in time that I can't complete that POG process until probably December.
Right.
So we'll have to set some maybe interim Board of Ed goals that tie in, but I think I can provide enough scaffolding to help that process be in parallel. But it's not ideally what I would have wanted,
Just as a facilitator, I want to make sure you get the best value for the time we spend together. So we may have another conversation prior to the next session.
Sure, of course.
To try to align this a little better. But I'm also going to send a couple documents because I think you're right in one regard. There's so much unknown between now and September or even December or whatever. And so I think the planning process has to continue, but I think the board also has to be kind of prepared to sidestep or whatever periodically as things are thrown at us. I know the governor's supposed to present, or the commissioner, either of them are supposed to present tomorrow the outline of their plan. Monday, I think, is when they're going to do the big unveil of the 50-page document, which may drive a lot of the work that we have to do between now and then. And frankly, I would not be shocked if sometime around August 30th, they had to revise it because new information's come in, and nobody likes to work that way, but you can't really do any different.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that the best information, or how do I say this, the more information that you can prepare the board with in terms of the work that's gone into Portrait of a Graduate, where your staff was in the district plan. In my mind, it still looks like a district improvement plan, that you break down into the school improvement plans. And I don't want to subvert all that work by bypassing it specifically, because that's where all the data is looked at, and you really assess the needs of the district. But I think working together, we can make something happen good for the district.
Yeah, and I agree that in many circles that I've been talking to now, I know that a lot of places are putting a lot of things on hold until they find out what the state, because the state will require things of us we've never ever had required of us before. So yeah, it's a strange goal year for boards. It's just very strange.
And then, how it's all going to get paid for is a whole nother issue. And of course, unfortunately, that's going to fall on the board to do as much as it can. I think between the Superintendent's National Association and the business officials, they figured that the average size school district needs about $1.7 or $1.8 million in COVID-related expenses. And I don't think we're going to see the state, unfortunately, reimburse us for that. But the work's too important to put off for a year. I think it's important that you keep going, at least have the target in mind. You might be slower on some of the initiatives that develop out of it, but I think it's important that you have that vision incorporated into where you want to go.
Yeah, I don't want to let go of it because, we want to try to develop it in parallel. Keep it going. I'd rather not let it fall to the side, because it's important work. But obviously there'll be many other things that have to happen as well. New goals that we wouldn't have had.
And you have new board members who certainly want to mark their imprint on what goes forward. And this is a chance for them to do that, as well as the seasoned board members to share their knowledge and expertise and help guide the new folks so that everybody feels good about the direction you're going.
Right. And just as a reiteration, as we did that work in September, October, board was invited to that work too. So the previous board, and then of course the new board will also be involved as we move, forward.
Now, one thing I'm going to do, Dr. Willett, I'm going to send you 3 documents that might be very helpful for everybody to look at before we meet again. One is a document we've put together that I think I've mentioned the Lighthouse Project to your board before, but a research-based program on how school boards can most effectively influence student achievement. One of the documents we've developed from that is a one-pager called The Role of the Board, and it talks about specific responsibilities or things boards should do. I think it would be helpful in this process for everybody to take a look at that coming into the meeting. The second sheet is actually a worksheet developed off of that. There's 5 specific roles, and there's 5 questions that we want to sort of align the work with. They will help the board align their work to the district goals. So it might be a slightly different way of looking at this. We have a little time to talk about how we could integrate that. And then the third thing is really something for further down the road, because one of the things I think is most helpful when you set goals is that you build into the timeline opportunities to talk about them. And I even go as far as to say every board meeting. It doesn't have to be a full-blown conversation, but maybe 5 minutes of here's where we are this month and related to the work we had in our goals. Just so that everybody knows we didn't just set these goals and they're nebulous and they're out there somewhere, but they're actually driving all of our work. And what this last document does is sort of pulls together a template so that whenever you report to the board on anything, there's specific questions that the board could say, whenever we see a presentation, here's the maybe 5 questions that we always would like to see answered. It'll streamline your presentations, help your staff, help the board focus their work on what's important. So I'll send them out ahead of time, and then we can talk a little more about whether they'll all be effective or not right away, or maybe we hold that third one back. But we have a little time to plan that a little better.
That makes sense.
Okay, at this time, maybe other board members would like to raise their hand and ask questions. I see that Karen has her hand up. So Karen?
Yes, thanks. I was just going to emphasize that the portrait of graduate work is going to be really important as part of our goals. As Dr. Willett was saying, I was able to attend the initial workshops, and the leadership of Dr. Willett, as well as the gentleman from, I believe it was Ed Advance, were really helpful, and the staff that was involved was really insightful, and it was really interesting to see the commonalities that came out of the work that was done and where everyone felt our students should be headed. So it would, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, the schedule wasn't able to move forward, but it was really important work that was in process, and I think it would be important to incorporate it into our goals for sure.
Thank you, Karen. Jacob has his hand up next.
Thank you, Dr. Willett and Mr. Caruso for coming here tonight and walking us through this process. I just wanted to touch up on something that you had said about trying to follow up on our goals every meeting, or at least pretty frequently. I like that idea going forward, to try to review them, at least monthly or something like that. So just want to throw that out there.
Okay. Thank you, Jacob. At this time, any other board members have any questions or comments? If you could just raise your little blue hand. No? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Nick, for joining us on this path. We do have inside the Board of Ed packet, we do have the other following dates to the step 2, July 13th, and step 3, we have August 17th. So if everyone could just make sure that those are written down, that would be great as we go through this. Like I said, we have a lot to look at. Dr. Willett, you will be putting this documentation onto the Board of Ed dashboard so we can review. I know I would like to review more of that portrait of the graduate because I do have some reservations, I guess I would say, because not every kid is going to be into technology and writing code and doing things of that nature. So I want to make sure that we are still well-rounded and we have kids that are in the HVAC and into other areas as well. So I don't want to be like leaving anyone out. That's just something that I just kind of, while you're going through, that came to mind. Because we should be thinking about all of our students and all of our students' different levels. And like I said, not every kid is going to be writing code. I know mine probably is upstairs right now, but that's something.
Yeah, well, no, and it acknowledges that too. It just means that how they fix an HVAC system, they might be using new technologies to do it, and that's kind of just making sure that the kids that have those skills. So it definitely does not say that they have to be doing apps. It's more like more broadly what we want to make sure they have as skills so that they can approach any problem and solve it, that kind of thing.
No, that would be perfect. So if you could have that information up there just to review, I think that would be beneficial because, like I said, I have those kind of questions in my head. I think about different, like even laborers, plumbers, any of that stuff that you're still using your hands. I mean, we are losing a lot of kids going to Wyndham Tech and, what's the other one? E.O. Smith. And, I just know even in Andrew's 8th grade class when they were going through the slides and I was like, wow, we actually are losing a lot of kids to the tech high schools. So that was just something that I had.
Yeah, and they did, state of Connecticut that's a good conversation to have, sort of set it up that way in a way with its comprehensive sort of high school model and all that. But yes, absolutely. And one of the portrait of a graduate groups would be tradespeople.
Okay.
So, and they would be talking about how to prepare future tradespeople in their areas. So it encompasses that as one of those groups, as an affinity group kind of thing.
I just want to make sure that we're not leaving anybody out.
Absolutely.
That was my first initial look. So Karen, you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, I was just going to add, it would really be important for whatever portrait of graduate work that's been done so far, if the rest of the board could become familiar with it, because what you're saying, Ashley, is actually, there's a big part of it and no one's being left out. I wouldn't really put it that way. Even someone who wants to go into, say, the HVAC business has to learn how to program a computer or work with technology these days. I have, a friend's son who is going to a tech school after graduating high school, and he's getting certified, and he is learning all of those pieces. So I don't think it's necessarily leaving kids out. It's incorporating all of the 21st century world into every profession.
Yeah, it's about how the job evolves. Like I used to be able to fix cars in a way that I can't do anymore because you need diagnostic. You have to plug a computer into the car now. So I can't do things that I am not trained well enough. But as people go into those fields, it's about using the new tech and the new trainings to make them resilient and capable of fixing the new cars, so it's definitely inclusive of trades and things like that. It's just pivoting to make sure that they have the skills they need to fix the cars of today, so to speak.
And that's great. I just, that was one of the first things that kind of came to mind, that kids are still working with their hands, they're still doing things.
Absolutely.
And so just, that was one of my first initial things. So Christina, let's go to you next.
Nick, thank you for jumping on. I can't wait to get to work. I'm looking forward to the workshops. just as part of the workshops, and I'm sure you'll bring this to the table, I'm always curious what other towns and other boards are doing as well, just to think outside of, the Tolland bubble. What's your experience with Portrait of a Graduate in other districts, and what's your experience with goal setting in other districts, and maybe bring some of those best practices to our table. I can't wait to get to work.
If you want to respond, just a quick response. There's a lot. This is really the in thing right now, the Portrait of a Graduate. I've worked with several boards who are in that process, who wanted to set goals based on the work that they've done. Again, timing's a little different, but we do what we can. But I know I spent a lot of time with the Waterbury board after they had gone through the process, and it really motivated the board to focus their work more effectively, I think, than in the past. So I think that it's a good time to be focused. What I've seen over time, because I've been doing this 26 years now, it used to be a goal was about a task or an objective. In other words, our goal is to make something, to develop something, to create something. It wasn't the outcome. And what I've been seeing over time is that the product of the goal is no longer we're going to have a new curriculum, or we're not going to have a new budget system, but that our children are going to achieve at higher levels or learn specific skills. It's student focused rather than task focused, I guess I would say. And I think that's a great direction to be going in. So with the work that your district's been doing on Portrait of a Graduate, it helps focus that attention on what we want out of our children. And also, just as an aside, I used to be a plumbing contractor in another life, and my brother still is. And he did some work for us in our office a couple weeks ago, and the technology changes and things he's had to learn, you would not necessarily have equated with plumbing and heating 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Even hot water heaters, they're computer systems now. It isn't just a tank with a burner on the bottom. So there's a lot of technology, even machining, which was another thing you could go do if you wanted to work with your hands. My daughter's in the aviation business making parts, and it's no longer like a sculptor where you take a chunk of metal and carve out the pieces you don't want and leave what you want behind. They're actually creating 3D models and doing it on 3D printers now. So everything's being envisioned through technology, no matter what you do. So I think it's not a question of teaching kids other skills, but if we want them to survive, because this is just over the last 26 years, I can't imagine what's going to happen 26 years from now. Maybe those robots will be doing the actual work and you have to tell it what to do. But anyway, I hope that answered your question.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Kate.
Thank you, both Dr. Willett and Mr. Caruso. I appreciate both of you, both of your presentations and insights. Just a couple things on the Portrait of Graduate. You said it is the in thing, and I'd agree with that. It is the in thing because it's part of the NEASC accreditation. And the Portrait of Graduate really is all about making sure that every single kid has those capacities, those skill sets, et cetera, so that they're successful regardless of what they end up choosing to do or choosing to study going forward. So, and I loved what you said, Nick. You said that it's student focused versus task focused, and I think I really couldn't say it better than that. I just wanted to ask a quick question of Dr. Willett. As we work through the Portrait of the Graduate, I think I heard you say that we are going to make sure to get input from the various stakeholders in different industries so that we are as facile as possible. Did I make that up, or was that?
No, that's one of the most exciting parts is, for instance, reaching out to people that are working in engineering and saying, what do engineers need, and reaching out. And in that process, we also reach out to, to populations that, aren't part of the majority population. From a culturally responsive perspective, things like that, and say, what has your experience been? What do you believe that we need to have for a graduate? And that ties into, a lot of recent events, are we creating graduates that can function in the world in a way that promotes social equity and justice and things like that? So it's got many different facets, from both making sure we're getting engineers ready for engineering, but also making sure we're getting responsible citizens ready for the world. And so it ties in that way too. And so other work you've seen me put out lately ties into that aspect of Portrait of a Graduate. So in many ways, this is the most exciting work. This is the part that I was really looking forward to. And of course, then it got kind of cut off there, but we're not, we're going to get on the horse and keep going. So.
Right, and I just had one other quick question, because Ashley mentioned it. So tech schools and numbers, is that something that we can talk about in terms of like, how do we make sure we keep our kids? And are we looking at a big attrition?
Well, to be frank, that's a different conversation. It connects, but it's different. So, for instance, E.O. Smith, I think her reference is to the agriculture program, and we don't have an agriculture program, nor only certain schools can have an agriculture program. So we will probably lose children that want to work in the agriculture program to the agriculture schools, and that is part of the way the state of Connecticut kind of has that set up. But and unless we start one in Tolland, we can't retain the ones who want agriculture program unless we started one, and we'd have to go through a process for that. But that's kind of a conversation about how Connecticut handles its education overall versus our goal setting. So those are connected, but that may be something that turns into a state advocacy thing. If people feel like we should have certain things happening in all high schools. That would be kind of something to bring up on a state level too. So there's many great, exciting opportunities to talk about this on a variety of levels.
Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Okay, let's go to Dana next.
Thank you. First of all, Dr. Willett and Mr. Caruso, thank you so much for your thoughtful and thorough presentation. It was very eye-opening. I know we kind of touched on it a little bit, but I was hoping, and first of all, I like Kate's question about the stakeholders getting involved, to communicate to the young adults or students the opportunities of what will be in their next step post Tolland Public Schools. But can you describe how Portrait of a Graduate meets the definition of each young adult or student's own success, specifically prep for tech, military, trade schools? You also said to be responsible citizens, which I really appreciated. If you could touch upon that a little bit, that would be great.
Yes. So to kind of talk about how how Mr. Caruso was talking about how it became much more student focused rather than task focused. They're going to need creativity and innovation and resilience, whether they're in the military or they're working in engineering or even fighting against the evils of the world and social justice. So, what we're looking to do is create human beings prepared to function in the world in the most important places that human can develop. And innovation and creativity, for instance, how to foster those things. We know those are important in humans. We know that is what differentiates us from the machines, and that is one of the most powerful aspects of being a human. How do we create curriculum that fosters innovation, that fosters resilience? And so that's the part of the Portrait of a Graduate that's most vital, is taking the most complicated parts of and the most uniquely beautiful parts of humans and developing them so that we can put them into the workforce and they would be able to function no matter what domain they're in. Whereas older focuses were focused on much more minute kind of things. These are focused on things that will allow the humans, people to function in any role at high levels. And so that's where the Portrait of Graduate brings the attention. And that's important today, because the jobs that people will have, anything that can be done by a machine will be the loss of a job to a human. So toll takers, that's gone. Probably standing behind the counter at McDonald's is probably gone. In the next 20 to 30 years, those jobs are gone. So we need to be able to foster graduates that can function in ways that they never have really been able to do before. And so, or that school systems have never been able to really help get people to do before. Because if they didn't, weren't successful in certain things, that's okay. They could go work they could go take tolls, or they could go work for McDonald's, but that will not be there. So it's trying to make sure that the skills that we develop are the ones that are most inherently and uniquely things that only human beings can do. And so in an HVAC system, anything that can be done by a machine in HVAC will mean the loss of a job for someone in HVAC. But if we can create people that, if we can send out graduates that are, able to be resilient with hard problems and able to diagnose systems using computers in ways that they never were able to do before, now we've prepared them for the workforce and given them a skill that actually has a job associated with it. So this is really just making sure that we are creating graduates, fostering graduates that can look at the world and say, this is an injustice. This needs to be fixed. This is something that I have a problem here with how cars are, working on the highway. I can create an engineering innovation that solves that problem. Self-driving vehicles, radio, networks, things like that. So, getting humans used to using and building the skills of their innovation, their creativity, the things that make us unique. Because the rest of it, the machines will do for us. So that's what we're trying to make sure they have.
Thank you. I appreciate it. The video was great. It was interesting, and my kids even popped in and thought it was pretty cool. And you're right. I mean, we have to create or help foster our young adults, our students, to be global and very well-rounded, and able to kind of follow the path to be successful. So I'm appreciative of this program. And I think it was Christina who said that she's excited to get to work, and I'm excited to have a little more time with Mr. Caruso as well, and really dive into this topic or these topics themselves. So thank you very much to you both.
Yeah. And, kind of a good example, just to throw it out there, is what the kids would be designing today would be, a variety of things, but just to throw it out there, the data predicting algorithms and systems that helped us predict what COVID would do, that allowed us to get in front of it, are the kinds of things that, those are the jobs, that's where the work is. Analytics, people doing things with virtual creations. These are the kinds of things the places where the jobs will be in the future. And they're not going to necessarily require college graduates to do them. Google's hiring a lot of people that never graduated from college. So it's really a pivot in what we're asking human beings to do.
Okay, perfect. So
Thank you.
I think everyone has asked any questions that they have, and I think that we can continue to move on. So once again, thank you very much, Nick. I actually look forward to the 3 documents that you have. Whether or not we get the 3rd one, we'll see. But I think that would be helpful for the discussions to just go through all the different steps. And once again, I just want to make sure to point out the different dates for the goal setting that's in there. So thank you again, Nick, very much for coming. And if you had anything last minute to add, or you're good.
Well, it's funny because a couple people mentioned the military. The last number I heard, and I could be off a little bit, but only 7% of high school graduates are eligible to the military now because of, I think 28% of high school graduates can pass the entrance exam, and because of health-related issues, a lot of others are ineligible. So one of the all catch-alls that we have traditionally thought was a place people could go if they didn't want to do other things is just as rigorous. So again, it just sort of clicked in my head as we were talking. So I think it makes our work all that much more urgent. So I look forward to working with you.
I look forward to working with you, too.
I found that too, Nick. It's the ASVAB test that kids really struggle with. It's really challenging. So
The ASVAB, yep.
All right, so we'll see you on July 13th.
Yes, thank you very much. And we'll see if it's in person or if it's going to be virtual.
We'll work that out one way or another.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nick.
Have a
Good night.
Good night.
So let's go to H2 for the budget. Moving on.
So, yep. So, quick summary here. You're very familiar with the 6 or 7 phase documents that led us through the process. We did have a very tough year. COVID interrupted our budget process, extended our budget timeline, and necessitated that we have kind of this evolving look at snapshots at where we are at each meeting and making the best decisions we can with the information we have. So as we get to the point that we're at now, which is essentially the 9th inning, we are at the end game here of the year. Things are panning out largely as was predicted. And so through each of these documents, it's kind of evolved. Where we've landed today, if you recall that the last Board of Ed meeting, you gave me authorization to act on the recommendations. I have been doing that. So at this point in time, we have arrived at a figure as of June 18th, which is 798. You'll notice that's significantly down from the 1.2, but that is as to be expected because we are now expensing and incurring the costs that the board authorized me to expense and incur. So this figure now, as of today, is about 569. So it's 798 here. It's about 569 now. As I said, it will fluctuate up and down as we release things. We have another bus contract. We're going to have renegotiated and released that for some special education. So another 50,000 will come back from that. So the 569 today will become 613 or so tomorrow. And then the next day after that, we'll be opening up other things. So it's fluctuating within the range that we predicted it would fluctuate. And the recommendations, as you accepted, are now being incurred. So these items are now being purchased and used to mitigate the fiscal year 21 impacts. The medical transfers are happening as was discussed. These purchases in recommendation 3 of the curriculum and the 360 units are now in the system, and those are being deducted from the overall figure as was discussed. And additionally, PPE, as we talked about, has now been incurred. And so finally, as we come to the end here, recommendation 5, we are landing pretty much where we thought we would. Again, we have a few more days to the fiscal year here. Not many, though. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 or 5 more days to the fiscal year. So I gave you a high-low. Basically, the high as of the June 18th was about 798, which was what's left after we incurred the expenses from the recommendations 1 through 4. The low is about 433. So this is a projection of a high-low. If we go with the high number, these are the 30, 40, 30 splits in blue. If we end with the low number, we are, the 30, 40, 30 split in yellow. And right now, as of this moment, we're about 600,000, 569 to 600. So, we're landing roughly where we thought we would. I don't have complete control over exactly how that fluctuates in the next few days, but through the process that started at the end of April with the documents that led to where we are now, these were designed to give the board the information it needed to make the decisions it needed to make so that we could, do what we had reached out to achieve to do in each of the areas and each of the recommendations, and to provide some funds over to the town to mitigate some of that fund balance impact. So right now, as of this moment in time, it looks very much like what we predicted would be the case is playing out to be the case. I'm knocking on wood because I don't want anything to get all crazy on us, but it does look like it's landing where we thought it would. So that's roughly the budget update right now. And I'll be letting you know as we get to June 30th what that end balance ultimately is at the end of that day or the beginning of July.
Okay. If anyone has any questions, I'm going to sneeze again. Okay, we're good? Okay, we're good. Thank you, Dr. Willett.
No problem.
So
next.
Yep.
Okay, so at this time, as you know, we did have a resignation for our distinguished high school principal. Will be a big loss to the district. She's served for 10 years, and much appreciated all her years of service. Also served as a president of the Tolland Administrative Society. So it's always been good to work with, and very much appreciated her time here. She's given a lot to Tolland. As she did submit her resignation, the process started, and as per Article 11 of the bargaining unit agreement, this was posted. The assignments and transfers section, we did have somebody post into that job and request it. This is a highly qualified candidate. This is an individual who is very, very respected, has done an unbelievable job. And so this individual did respond to the internal posting. And that is what we do with all positions is we post them. Both bargaining units, you have a posting period. This individual did post in. And so after having talked to him and interviewed with him, he is going to and willing to be transferred. I can make a transfer that is not voluntary, but this individual is willing to make a voluntary transfer and is interested in the job. And this individual has already been appointed. He's already been appointed to the administrator bargaining unit and already is an appointed administrator. So as per that article, he can be transferred. And so in this case, he's being transferred to the position of principal. And he is going to do an amazing job in that role. And so as per past practice, when administrators in that bargaining unit do internally apply, should I deem that they have the skills requisite to do it, under that article, I will transfer them. So in this case, my intention is to transfer Thomas Tolland, who is the current assistant principal, has had years of experience working as a dean of students, has another additional year of experience working here, is well respected, has ELA background and has functioned extremely well. And as a fairly young administrator, we're also frankly getting a really good deal. So he has been for the town of Tolland an amazing employee as an administrator. He will continue to be an amazing employee as a principal. So I'm very excited to come to you as a board. And typically as past practice, this has also happened when we had transfers of individuals from assistant principal positions into curriculum supervisor positions and assistant principals positions into director of special education. We have made these transfers under Article 11 in the past and has been past practice for the process. So this is playing out as we have done for past practice, playing out as per the bargaining unit agreement and also in compliance with, with 4010 as he has already been appointed to that unit. So I was bringing it to you today to let you know what my intention is. After today, I would be making the final arrangements, and then what would happen is that assistant principal job would open and we would post that assistant principal job. I don't expect, well, we may get an internal candidate for that, but most likely we will not. And so we will start the process of creating the committee, which includes members of the community, includes the staff, it includes TEA members, that kind of situation. There's a process that I have set forward for that we use for all people, our interviewing and hiring process. And it connects to the state mandates and all of it. So we would start that process almost very soon for an assistant principal. The only other thing I would add is that this is an extremely vulnerable time for the district. We, as you know, have not received direction yet from the state of Connecticut, and we're going to essentially have to build an almost entirely new way of schooling for next year. It's very important to have the expertise of our current administration in place. So not only is he an awesome candidate for this and would be perfect for the position, I need him in that principal role, and I need to move forward with the planning. So this is a very, very good situation that we have to be able to have Mr. Tolland in that role.
Okay, let's open this up to board questions. Jacob, you have your hand up?
Yeah, so I don't know Mr. Tolland personally, but I've heard good things about him from you and other people. I guess my only thing would be is sometime over the summer, I think it'd be kind of great if we could have him at a board meeting, maybe to get to know him a little bit better as a board and I just think it's important to kind of have that sort of a good relationship with some of the better administrators and see what some of his goals are and thoughts. But otherwise, I'm excited that he's moving into that role.
Yeah, he's all of our admin are excellent, and he is excellent. He would be happy to do that. I know he'd be excited to come and talk to the group.
Okay, that'd be great.
Sure.
Okay, let's go to Kate.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for moving quickly on this in an extremely volatile time, because this is my this is what I do. My work life. It's lucky for Tolland that Mr. Poland decided to take that position. I would be very careful when we talk about our administrators and not to call them better or worse, because they all work their tails off for us, and I want to make sure that I say that and that people hear that. And we are lucky to have that continuity. It is really fortunate that he is willing to take this job during this extremely, volatile time. So I just wanted to thank you, Dr. Willett. I know that he'll do a good job, and I know he has you to look to as he navigates the new role of being a principal. And I'd like for him to be able to look to us too, to support him as he makes this transition. So that's really all I had to say, and thanks again.
Thank you, Kate. Let's go to Karen next.
Yeah, I was just going to say when we met Mr. Poland, when he was first hired for assistant principal at the high school, I was very impressed with him. I've had some interaction with him at the high school, and I know that he has very student-centered philosophies, and the kids all seem to respect him and like him. So I think that's a great running start, obviously, for him to be successful as principal. So I look forward to seeing him in that role. Thanks, Dr. Willett.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Tony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I just want to agree with everything that everybody said there. Having had the opportunity to talk with Mr. Poland numerous times over the past years, I think we're in an incredibly great position that he not only wanted, but was where he could move into this position. I'm curious, Dr. Willett, as far as the process you mentioned for then what we do with the assistant principal position. Do you have something you could post on the board site where we could see just how that process works and
Absolutely.
I guess what the timeline would look like?
Yep, absolutely can. Yeah, I developed a very extensive process that includes a number of different interview rounds, and I'll post that to the Board of Ed dashboard and anywhere else that you want.
Thank you.
Yep, sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, anyone else at this time? I do not know him personally, but I saw him at the virtual graduation and said hi. That's about it. So perfect. So, Dr. Willett, I think you got what you needed out of this.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let's go to H4.
Okay, so H4, let me just make sure I click. Oops. So H4 discusses or gives a heads up of the community workshop. You did probably see this posted. We have a lot of interest in this even after a short time of posting. There's going to be a series that we'll be doing as a district. This first one is called Voices for Our Schools, a discussion of how scholastic experiences can be designed to prepare students for a diverse society. It does tie into Portrait of a Graduate work. And there are many students who are interested in being part of the process and giving their very, very important and crucial input about their experiences, in the Tolland Public Schools and maybe in Tolland in general as well, to help move the district forward and to make sure that we're educating in a equitable manner and in a manner that that we would all want and be proud of. So this particular community workshop is occurring on June 29th at 7 p.m. I did include the Zoom information here so that it is also posted on our sites, and I'm going to send. It was sent out yesterday. I'm going to post it out there again tonight, and we have at least 20 people within the first couple of hours. So I assume we're going to get probably quite a few that are going to be part of this first workshop. And so Representative Pat Wilson-Phineas, Dr. Gerald Harrison, and other people will be part of a panel. I moderate the panel, and we'll have the introductions. People will give some statements. Then the panelists will take questions, and ultimately public participation and student voices will be also heard. Now, this particular workshop is one of a series. So the subsequent workshops would highlight students, graduates, and have them be the focus of the panel and be the focus of some of our future ones. And so this is the beginning of a series that will center the voices of students and Black and Brown students and other students that that I think really need to be centered in that conversation. And so you will get an opportunity to, in the process of the series, really get input that maybe we've never heard before. So this is very, very important work, and it ties into Portrait of a Graduate because obviously this particular work will be used as and segue into more Portrait of a Graduate work, so we can make sure our graduates are going out into the world and functioning productively with with all people of all backgrounds and not falling into the traps. So that our society sometimes kind of has laid down due to the history. So we need to be doing this work, and this will be among the first of a series. So I wanted to make sure that I shared that and that it's out there. And anybody who wants to come, obviously from the board, it would be exciting to have board members there too.
Okay, perfect. Anyone? Tony, is your hand up from before or new one?
Not from before. My apologies.
Okay, let's go to Kate.
Thank you, Dr. Willett, for your leadership on this. I appreciate it. And I do know Dr. Hairston from my professional dealings, and he's excellent. I'm excited to see that we're going to have this conversation. It's overdue. So I just had a question. Is there any energy, or has there been any reach out from the town council to you to kind of co-opt any kind of community-wide conversations, or is this really just focused on the schools?
Right now, this is focused on the schools. And I think there is a lot that we need to hear, and I think there's many students also who have been looking for an opportunity to speak and share. So this particular work is focused on the schools, but I would be happy to work with the town to do, community work, at the municipal level as well. So, I see this as ongoing and extremely important work, maybe of the most important. So, any which way that we can turn on this, and any larger group that we can bring into that or loop into that process, I'd be happy to be a part of working with. But this particular initiative is focused on schools and students and making sure that we're living up to our civic and moral responsibilities in terms of the education we provide.
And I just have a quick follow. Thank you. I just have a quick follow-up question. Is this a new initiative, Dr. Willett, for Tolland Public Schools?
So this isn't a completely new initiative, but this particular span of this, we really need to center Black and Brown voices in a lot of the work that that is done, and so. This initiative is not new, but I think takes the appropriate pivot to centering those, Black and Brown and voices that we're not necessarily hearing from. And so there's a moment in time here where there are people that are very interested in contributing, and I want to make sure that they have the chance to do that. So I myself plan on taking us, taking a seat and being to the side of others that should be on the panels that can speak to things in ways that I can't. So I'll always be sort of managing the technology and facilitating, but my hope is to put, to basically, help provide where I can the opening for that work to be done and the voices to be shared that are probably not really being heard, or haven't been, or haven't felt like they could be. So, so this is an important pivot in the conversation. But I can do a report on all the culturally responsive work that we've done in the district. But this is work that that needs to be done that connects to it, but that hasn't necessarily happened before.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Let's go to Karen next.
Yes, just a quick question for Dr. Willett. And I know that this is, subject matter that you have kind of brought into the schools, but in a way through the community as well, through some past community workshops you've done. So, and then I was just going to say, yes, back to Portrait of a Graduate, of course. And does this also relate to our culture and climate pieces that we talk about as well?
Absolutely. One of our core objectives is making progress with culturally responsive education and culture and climate. As you know, and many of the board members know, the Skills for Adolescence class, a large part of that was to introduce the students and to make sure we were centering the conversations in ways that are important for our graduates and our students to start to understand. So the process has been happening, but again, it will and needs to evolve. And so this is taking that process and continuing to extend it. And we have had workshops that are important and like this in the past. We had University of Connecticut, some cooperative workshops with them, held in the Tolland Public Library, showing of the 13th, for instance, and then a community panel on that. But at the same time, this work never really ends. There's so much of it to do. And so these student voices are going to be crucial in the next couple of meetings here as we can get them to the table. And I think people will find them very insightful. And, we're going to have, I think there's going to be an opportunity to hear with love and compassion what people are saying. We need to be able to hear what they're saying, even if we don't, like it. And I think that, even myself, I think there's going to be things that maybe could be, thrown in my direction. Maybe I haven't done enough. I need to be able to hear that. And not get defensive about it, but think about how I can make changes to live up to the ethical and moral obligations I have. So this is going to be important work, probably not easy work, but extremely important work. And this is a great opportunity for us to hear and to move forward as a community.
Great, thank you so much.
Dr. Willett, if you could please mute Mary Rose.
Okay.
Thank you. Karen, were you all set?
Yes, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. At this time, anyone else? I don't see anyone else's hand up. Let's go to H5.
Oops. Okay, so as of this time, let me see if I can share this particular document. I have to switch up the sharing here, which is always an adventure. Okay, there we go. Are you seeing the reopening advisory committee with colors? And okay, so basically we've gotten to the point now where I've got a series of internal committees working, having meetings today talking about the governor's, right now, the lack of direction from the state, but we do expect to have some information delivered tomorrow. We've been promised that there would be information delivered on Thursday. I've attended many different meetings across with many different groups, including superintendents groups. So we've had enough now internally as a staff to start breaking into staff working groups, and we're starting to compile options, look at finances, and look at things that we need to do. Now that we've come to this particular point in time where the governor should be providing more information as of Thursday, I will be making the calls to the appointees to the Tolland Reopening Advisory Committee. So the Tolland Reopening Advisory Committee, the design and the objective for this committee is to receive updates from the superintendent regarding the local, state, and federal guidelines with respect to reopening, to review the plans that are being presented by me and by the school staff as we compile them. And we have to adhere to the state mandates, requirements, and guidelines. So I'll be sharing that with the TRAC as we go along. And obviously taking the input feedback to work with as parents and community members, provide more information and concerns. I'll be going back and within what's acceptable within the state mandates, requirements, and guidelines, making tweaks that community members, are anxious about or want to see. But this will be a great opportunity for us to be sharing with the community the information as it happens, and we'll be meeting probably 30 times, 20 to 30 times, not this track committee, but internal staff groups that are working on this. We have an extremely busy summer, so we're going to be doing a tremendous amount of work, and on these dates, I'll be providing information and taking feedback from the individuals that are on the track committee so that we can keep moving forward and the community is well informed. So right now we have 80 people that have stated that they're interested in working from the community. We're going to put those groups randomly. So we're going to put them in groups related to the different schools that they have children in. And then, as I stated before, I'll be using a program to select randomly from that group a series of people to work, and probably 2 to 3 people per school. So right now the meeting dates are Monday, July 6th, and they're on a series of Mondays. So July 6th, July 14th, July 20th, July 27th, and August 3rd. My objective is to have an operational plan for the district by August 3rd. That's going to require, as I said, a tremendous amount of time and planning in these committees as we work. And so we'll be working with TRAC and reporting out to TRAC and getting feedback from TRAC on those dates from 7 to 8:30 p.m. And I have the Zoom information here so people can listen in as we go along, so people know what's happening. There'll be people that are on the committee, but I'll open it up so that anybody can log in and hear the proceedings. And on top of that, we have the Board of Ed members. Ms. Besaw, Ms. Howard-Bender, and Ms. Plord will be on there. The parent guardians will be selected in the next few days, and communication will be sent out. Obviously, with 80 people expressing interest, it's very, we're going to be taking a certain number from each school representing group, but there's no way we can include all 80. So like I said, the random selection will allow us to send, invites to those, see if they're able to do it. If they're not, there'll be alternates. And then anybody else who wants to can log in and hear the meetings and the proceedings. So it won't be done in private. It'll be very transparent. And the student representatives, Alexandra, we're going to want you on there. And, obviously, we'll include our new member too. So we're going to be, Samar will be on there. If there is another student, I'm willing to consider that too. But right now, Alexander and Samar would be our student reps. So, so this is where we're at. We should have the appointments done, and we should be getting everything in place in the next few days. Next week, there are no meetings. We're in the July 4th week. But as we get out of next week into July 6th, everything starts rolling very fast. We are going to use, I plan on working most days next week with staff. And so we will be putting together scenarios and information that I will be presenting at the first track meeting. So we're really going to hit the ground running, and it's going to be fast and furious for this entire month as we get everything in place. We really have to have a plan by the beginning of August. We can't be in a position where we don't. So this is this is going to require a tremendous amount of time in the summer here, but I'm very optimistic that, that the progress we've already made and the skill sets of the people involved are going to help us get there. So this is just a basic update on where we are. Those of you who did ask or apply to be part of it, you will be hearing in the next few days, probably into next week, and we'll be ready to roll by Monday, July 6th.
Oh, that's great. 80 people. That's fantastic. That shows our community wants to get involved. So
they do, for sure.
Opportunity. Did anyone have any questions? And I do think we will probably need to entertain a motion to extend past 10 o'clock because we're already at, I think, like around 9:50, I think.
Kate Howard Bender, motion to move, extend the meeting past 10 o'clock.
Jacob Murray, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, you say nay, or you can abstain. Jacob?
Aye.
Lord?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Kate?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. Aye. Yes.
And Dina?
Aye.
All right. Therefore, we will go extend past 10 o'clock, but hopefully not too much past 10. Did anyone have any questions in regards to the reopening advisory committee? Okay. Then we can move on to the committee and liaison reports. I know we had, I don't know, Tony, did you want to do anything for policy? I know you met right before.
Yep, just real quick, yep. We met policy today. We discussed the civility policy that we've been going over the past couple of meetings. I think we made good improvement. We're ready to do the first draft back to the committee at the next meeting. We also went and looked at a policy 1030, which is kind of an overarching non-discrimination policy. That one comes out of our compulsory group, and we'll be ready to come before the board for the first meeting whenever the leadership decides.
Okay. And you said it was 10:30?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Take my notes. Griffin, I know you had FFC and then the graduation task force.
Okay, so FFC met yesterday and we went through the facility agreement, which is just kind of the agreement between the Board of Ed and the town as far as kind of who does what with, I think it was mostly kind of like landscaping kind of stuff and, just to know who was responsible. So there were no questions. We went through actually the document we kind of looked at today with the latest phase 3 updates. We talked about that a little bit. And then we talked a little bit about policy 3010, just kind of going forward, just kind of more presentation of what FFC would like to see for how the budget document is presented for FFC. And I think that was pretty much it. And we're going to not have a meeting in July. And I think judging from what Dr. Willett just put up for all of the reopen advisory, now I can really understand why he was absolutely fine with that. So we'll be in touch if anything comes up, but we will reconvene FFC for our August meeting. And then for the graduation task force actually did not meet, but we are meeting on Tuesday. And we did get some great news that the governor has finally agreed to allow 250 people for graduation. So since that was kind of the ultimate goal of the task force was to have all the kids be able to walk together, we will be able to make that happen. So we'll focus next week on kind of exactly what the logistics are for that. But that was very exciting news that we will finally be able to do that for the seniors. So that's pretty much it on my end.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Christine. I don't believe, did anyone do the town council? No, because last night we had our own meeting, so there's nothing going on with that. I think we are all set, right? I'm not forgetting anyone.
I have just a quick update from communications. We didn't have a meeting, but we are having kind of a little kickoff meeting with the parent teacher organizations from the schools next week. So hopefully that will be a good start to good connections.
Oh, it's exciting to have. And what day would that be?
We are meeting on the 30th.
30th. Okay. Okay, perfect. Once again, just making sure I did not forget about anybody else or have anybody something to say.
Well, Birch Grove, but you probably know that there's no update.
I figured as much. I'm like, we did a lot last meeting. I think Dana could take a break this meeting.
Katie's presentation. I'm good.
That's what I figured. Okay, so let's go. I don't have a chairperson's report this week, but we do have a board action for the Educational Reserve Fund request.
Yes.
So Christina Plord, I'd like to make a motion that the Tolland Board of Education pursuant to Ordinance 86, Chapter 8 hereby makes the request that the town council transfer 30% of the BOE audited balance of June 30th, 2020 into the Educational Reserve Fund.
Kate Howard Bender, I'd like to second that.
Okay, perfect. Any discussion? Did anyone have any questions before we vote on the reserve fund? Don't see anybody. We will do a roll call, and therefore, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And I will go to Jacob.
Aye.
Lord?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Dana?
Aye.
I as well. Motion passes unanimously.
Skipped me, but I'm an aye also.
Oh, I see. Your black is all the way down. I hate that.
You need me to raise my hand?
I do what it is. Yeah, because everyone, like, as soon as you share screen, your blacks are different, and then I miss people who go below that.
I think not having Rini tonight's throwing me off. So, so he's reading Dana.
And I know at one point Griffin disappeared, and I was going to say something, but then she reappeared, and then I'm like,
Yeah, I got kicked out.
Technology's been challenging tonight.
Okay, so Dr. Willett, this passes. We're all set, so you can go ahead with that reserve fund.
Yep. So that's part of our phase document. So this is good. We're rolling along very well.
Perfect. Let's go to the public participation with the 2-minute time limit. Comments need to be included on the items on this agenda, and Tony, the timer we have, and he will give you the little hand up with the 30 seconds. And at this time, if you have anything, you can just raise your hand and I'll pop you up at the top and we can go from there. Oh, and also before you talk, make sure you list your name and your address. I always forget that part. And Tony with the crickets. Going once. There we go. Alexandra Costa. Let's go to her first.
Alexandra Costa, 54 Josiah Lane. Earlier in the meeting, the issue of Columbus Day was briefly touched upon. From a student's perspective, the renaming of Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day in Tolland Public Schools calendar is one that is essential now more than ever. Coming from a student who learned the harsh realities of this country's largely through my own research, it is imperative that more attention is drawn to these realities. Renaming of this holiday in our school's calendar will allow for further education through discussion that will hopefully create more acceptance and understanding in our own community. Just because the state has not renamed the holiday should not prohibit our progression and growth as a community.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. And let's go to Colleen.
Sorry, before can we just make sure? Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, we have points of information, so we're all set with that. Colleen?
Sorry, I was just doing it for noise, that's all.
Oh. Okay, Colleen?
I'm going to unmute Colleen to make sure Colleen, are you there?
Yeah.
Yep. Gotcha.
have to start over.
So yeah,
We didn't hear anything, so start with your name and address.
At home, like nobody listens to me at home either. So it's calling you to check 12 Blueberry Hill. I just first want to say I hope everybody's well. I had already emailed Mr. Tolland tonight after I saw the stuff in the Board of Ed packet, but as being part of hiring him last year for the AP position, I'm very happy that he's moving along. I'm like a few members said, students seem to really like him. I think he'll be great. He's young and lots of energy. And I also, is Fisher still on here? I want to congratulate him and thank him for all his service to the Board of Ed. And I watched the graduation virtually. I went to the parade, and I'm so proud of the class of 2020. And these young, now adults, just are so great. And I think we have a lot of good people going into our future. That's all.
Okay, perfect, Colleen. Thank you. Let's go to Liz.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully everyone's doing well. First of all, I would like to say good job, Alexandra, because I agree 100% with what you just said. So proud of you for saying it. I also am very proud of Fisher and can't say enough about his graduation speech as well as what he said tonight. I'm hoping he will come back and live out the as an adult in the community as well. Congratulations to Mr. Poland, having attended a number of the budget workshops. He is a fantastic fit for that position, and I'm excited to see him succeed in that. And then finally, I would love to see in the future, after the next community workshops, since I know Dr. Willett has done others like this, perhaps not as much involvement of the student population, but like with 13th, for example, that was a really well-attended one. But I would love to see the Board of Education put out a statement on anti-racist behavior specifically and more inclusive behavior in general. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Liz. Let's go to Jaden.
Hello, Jaden Redisford, 68 Old Stafford Road. I just wanted to congratulate Fisher for doing a phenomenal job over the last few years, because he's been he's even helped me get information about the Board of Ed and whatnot. So he's been awesome. He's represented students very well, and everything that's coming to him in his life that is good, he deserves. So I just wanted to say that. And another thing, I wanted to welcome. I know Alexandra's been on the represented students for this past year, but welcome, Samar. I know you both are going to do great. Lastly, I think Liz just mentioned it. Mentioning anti-racism in Tolland schools, that could be very beneficial to a lot of kids, because we, at the beginning of the school year, at least in the high school even, there's a club fair where students are introduced. There's a whole freshman introduction thing, and I don't know, I feel like that would be a good place to just run over how to treat people, how to stuff like that. So I won't take up any more time, but congratulations, Fisher, Alexandra, Samar, you're going to do great, and I hope everyone is well. Stay safe, and I will talk to everyone soon enough.
Thank you very much, Jaden. Anyone else at this time? If you could raise your hand and we can go through. I don't see anyone else. Okay, let's go to the points of information. At this time, if any board members have anything that they would like to say, if you could raise your hand, and we can go from there. Kate.
No, I just wanted to let you all know, Board of Ed members, that I sent an email to you with some links with regard to the portrait of the graduate, just so you could kind of get a little deeper into it. So that's just for, just so everybody knows.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, Plord.
Hi there. I just wanted to address Jaden. in regards to a statement from the Board of Ed regarding anti-racism. Maybe, I mean, I'd be happy to talk to you about that and bring it to leadership if you and I could have a one-on-one conversation at some point.
Am I allowed to respond? I
don't know.
But
I believe I have your email address, so I will be in contact.
Okay, perfect.
okay. Do you have anything else, Plord? Or are you good?
I'm good.
Okay. Samir? I probably messed it up.
I'm Sugar Well, 21 Sugar Bush Lane, and I think we should talk about including more African American history and other minority history in our classroom, such as in our curriculum. And I feel like that's very important because that's where kids learn the most. And I've taken AP history, and I have seen very less mention of African American history and history about certain minorities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me scroll down here. Anyone else at this time? Okay. So we can go to future. Dr. Willett, if you would like to run through any of this, and we should be good.
Sure. In short, everything that's on there, something we've been doing or are in the process of doing. So Portrait of Graduate, Lighthouse, school bus safety, we're probably going to be putting in the back burners. We said school rounds we've been doing, understand our design. We'll be hearing from curriculum staff throughout next year. Regionalization we've been working on, and Board of Ed goal setting we are immersed in. So most of those things you are rocking and rolling on. The mental health initiative, some of that is information I provided to you recently, and we'll continue that work into next year, especially as we go through COVID. Many things are being done and are needed. So a lot of great stuff happening, and we'll be able to talk about it all in the future.
Perfect. There is no new business, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Jacob Murray, I move that we adjourn at 10:03 p.m.
Chris Plord, second.
Any discussion? Not. Let's go to all those in favor. Tony?
Aye.
Jacob?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Griffin? See, now you're up here. See, now you're up in the boxes.
Aye.
Lord?
Aye.
Dana? Aye. And Kate?
Aye.
Hey, I will say the motion to adjourn passes at 10:04. Have a good night, everybody.